These are players that we are panicked on. I'm sure you are panicked on them in Dynasty. And so we got to sort out what we should actually do with these players and if they're cooked in Dynasty or if they have hope and light at the end of the tunnel. Let's start with Ladd McConkey, a guy who, if you were taking him this year in Dynasty startups, you were taking him either at the end of the second round or at the beginning of the third round, which is a very steep price for a Dynasty asset, 23-year-old wide receiver who so far through 4 weeks of this NFL season is the wide receiver 51. It's not because he's been injured. It's not because there's been anything wrong with his quarterback. It's because he simply hasn't performed. The target volume is not bad with Ladd McConkey, 9, 5, 7, and 6 targets. The problem is, a good example of this is against the Giants, where he really should have probably taken care of things in this matchup. 1 reception on 6 targets for 11 yards. 13, 9, 8, and 2 fantasy points. It's gotten pretty bad for Ladd McConkey. And so the question is, how panicked are we on Ladd McConkey, and what should we be doing with him in Dynasty Fantasy Football? Now, when you're looking at his market value ranking, obviously he's moved down rankings, for example, on Keep Trade Cut quite a bit here. He's down, below Garrett Wilson, below Brian Thomas, but still above Rashee Rice, Marvin Harrison Jr., A.J. Brown. So we have him as the wide receiver 15 market value ranking. So he's really lost 3 spots in Dynasty value so far, which I think is a nice little sweet spot to not overreact, but acknowledge that there is some concern here with Ladd McConkey. And really the big story here is that Quentin Johnson has broken out. And Quentin Johnson is demanding a high target volume. Quentin Johnson is turning plays into a touchdown. Quentin Johnson has become Justin Herbert's favorite target through the first 4 weeks of the year. Now, Ladd is somebody who, when you're looking at his profile, and this is kind of how I'm using his analytics to project him out long term, reception perception profile is elite, very good. He is one of the best wide receivers, in my opinion, from a talent perspective in the NFL. He just hasn't been able to get it going. But production can be fleeting. I think talent and situation is going to prevail. And so my guess here is Ladd McConkey is going to bounce back. I'm not super panicked on Ladd, and I'm going to be holding him because I don't think it's a good time to sell him. Number 1, you would be selling low. Number 2, there aren't a ton of guys around him that I would prefer over Ladd, with the exception of Rashee Rice, who I would have taken over Ladd before the season anyways. And so, in my opinion, in Dynasty leagues, you can look past the first 4 weeks of non-production for Ladd McConkey, acknowledge that Quentin Johnson is going to be an issue moving forward, and maybe it raises his overall ceiling. But Ladd was a guy that already kind of had a capped ceiling from a production standpoint in fantasy and Dynasty fantasy football. And you weren't drafting him to be that elite 20-point-per-game wide receiver 1 because he was never going to be that guy. I do still think he's a very high floor option for Dynasty. And so, in my opinion, he's a hold right now. My panic meter is not that high.
So a couple other guys. Garrett Wilson. Would you rather have Garrett Wilson or Ladd?
Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I'd take Garrett Wilson. Would you rather have Quinshawn and or Henderson over Ladd?
They're probably in the same tier.
They're all value equivalent to Ladd right now. So I do think, even though our panic meter isn't going to be super high with him, and even though we think that he's going to have some more productive games down the stretch, I do think he's priced accordingly right now, and I think it's a pretty fair price. I would not be shocked if this is where Ladd ends up settling once we get kind of further into the season and into the off season, and then he kind of just fluctuates in that like round 4 range, which is more kind of where he could settle long term, in my opinion, for a guy that I think from a production perspective is going to be a little bit inconsistent, and that's going to continue on from like what you saw his rookie season. Next guy that we're going to have here is Saquon Barkley, and Saquon is a guy that hasn't been not producing. He's just been like, all right, nothing super special. I mean, Javonte Williams is out producing Saquon Barkley right now. Cam Scatterbo looks better than Saquon right now. Quinshawn Judkins and Omarion Hampton and all these young guys are now out producing Saquon Barkley. Jonathan Taylor is popping off right now in his offense in Indianapolis. With Saquon's current production outlook over the last, or not outlook, but status over the first month of the season, 18, 17, 9, and 17 points. I think it's interesting that he's gotten like upper teens with the touchdown weeks, and then single digits with no touchdown weeks. This is kind of in contrast to what you saw last season, where his non-touchdown weeks, he was still like more often than not, he was in single digits or he was in double digits. And now this year, you're kind of looking at that offense in Philadelphia, and it's a lot of the same, but it's even more difficult to predict, at least through the first month, where you don't really know when Devonta's going to have a good game. You don't really know when A.J. Brown's going to have a good game. It's like a less good version of the Detroit Lions offense, a less explosive version, honestly. And with Saquon, you're kind of looking at him in this tier where he used to be in kind of a smaller tier below kind of those elite guys where he was there right with Achane and Hampton. And now that tier is expanded to a point where it's stretching across like multiple highly productive running backs that are veterans, some rookies, where it's like James Cook, Quinshawn, Henderson, who will be producing soon, we would expect, Josh Jacobs as well. Jonathan Taylor obviously has been a huge riser in Dynasty. I mean, every single one of these guys has been outproducing Saquon Barkley, and most, if not all of them, I think most of them they're all younger than Saquon. So with him and his production level right now, you're not necessarily getting what you paid for at late second round prices with Saquon if you did a startup in August. And that's a big concern because you were making a contending move if you were investing in that price point for Saquon, and it's already been a huge disappointment in terms of the value that you've lost. He hasn't like plummeted down boards or anything like that. He's slowly started to creep down a bit because his volume is about the same right now. So from a value perspective, I'm a little bit more worried because I think he was already at his value peak, and I don't think there's any way he's going to get back up to where he was previously. So when we're talking about value, I mean, I'm panicking a lot more than I am about like his production outlook, obviously, this season. I still think he'll finish as a running back one, but he might just be like a mid running back one if this offense is going to continue to look like the way it has the first month of the season.
Yeah, and what's funny is, on Keep Trade Cut, like his value's kind of maintained. Like I think it's just the production sentiment.
Like, would you rather have Saquon or JT at this point?
JT probably. I mean, so I don't know. Really, where I think Saquon Barkley settles if this pace continues, which it very well could, is I think he settles as probably like a 4th round pick in Dynasty startups next year. And you have guys in that range right now going the opposite direction.
If you can down tier to a running back who we view in the same tier in terms of dynasty value, but are maybe currently being priced like a round or two below where Saquon currently is, like would you down tier from Saquon to James Cook plus?
Well, that's literally what I was about to say. If you can get James Cook plus, I would do it. Yeah. If you can get Jonathan Taylor plus,
if you could get Quinshawn plus, I would do it.
If you can get Quinshawn plus, I'd be cool with that as well. And so that does make him kind of, it's less, I'm not really panicked about Saquon, but he's just somebody that I think you could get some pretty good deals out of right now before he does lose value, which I think inevitably, as you get to the end of the season, he will be losing some value. So if you would like specific offload targets and also buys and sells for your Dynasty team, we can do that for you. Again, you can get a team blueprint from Nathan and I and come join the community and get all access to all of our Dynasty tools and our Dynasty community and the full team blueprint process when you sign up with code DOMAIN with the annual Mother Flocker tier on flockfantasy.com/domain. I got the link down in the pinned comment. You get a free team blueprint. You're going to get a blueprint every week. You're going to be in the community with Nathan and I and all of our Dynasty players. And so come join. It's a good deal. You can be on the site with us. We'd love to have you. We'd love to look at your team. You can check it out at the link in the pinned comment. Let's talk about Sam Laporta. I mean, I don't know. I'm very familiar with his production profile this season because obviously he's my Flock League tight end. He's gradually lost some value, about 10 spots overall in the last 30 days for his market value. From a tight end positional standpoint, he's now the tight end 5. My guess he's been passed by Tyler Warren and Tucker Kraft. I already had him as my tight end 4. My guess is Tucker Kraft has passed him now. And I think it's somewhat warranted. The problem with Sam Laporta, he's still, the upside here is he's still a tight end that is playing on a very explosive offense, one of the best offenses in the NFL. The problem is, though, after getting 9 targets in week 1, he started to get 4 targets since then. Whereas at the end of last year, you saw him getting 6, 7, 10, 7, 8, 7. We're talking about 50% more targets last year. I mean, like, this is not ideal for Sam Laporta if he's getting 4 targets a game compared to like the 6 targets a game we saw him get last year. And it does make a big difference. He hasn't found the end zone at all this year. His snap share is still in the 90s, so he's still on the field a lot, but the fantasy production isn't there. And so at that point, I mean, this is why, tight end, as we say, the tight end is a luxury item in Dynasty. You could have streamed Hunter Henry this year and had more points. You could have started Kyle Pitts this year and had more points. Brenton Strange, I'm pretty sure, is right there with him. So at that point, that's extremely replaceable production. And he's going at prices where if you traded him for a flex spot guy, that's going to return on investment much more than having a Sam Laporta at tight end. And so to me, I don't think Sam Laporta was really ever worth the price he was going at in the offseason. I wasn't necessarily drafting him in Dynasty leagues. Look, long term, they've got Amon-Ra St. Brown there, they've got Jahmyr Gibbs there, they've got Monty there, and they've got Jameson Williams there now. It's just a very crowded offense on an offense that really primarily loves to run the ball. And so he is always going to kind of be an odd man out. And right now you can get some pretty good players for him at your flex spots. So With Laporta, I mean, I think if you have him and you're willing to move off of him and you can upgrade your flex spot, I don't think that's a bad move in Dynasty right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the third season of trying to guess with who's going to produce in that offense, the only guys you can consistently rely on are the running backs and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that is about it. Yep. So I'm with you there with his current price. I just think there are wide receivers in that range that are more attractive. Xavier Worthy being one for sure. The positional advantage of having like a wide receiver in that range compared to a tight end, it's so much greater to have a wide receiver there with the impact it has for your starting lineup and your roster as a whole and the production upside, that it's just worth investing in a wide receiver instead. Or if you want to get like a proven veteran running back or one of the young guys that's on the rise, like here's a bold one. Would you rather have Sam Laporta or Cam Scatterby right now?
I mean, probably Scatterby.
I would lean Scatterby because I think his value upside is much higher than Laporta's.
It is.
So that's just when you're playing the market, playing value upside alone. If you're like a reload, for example, and you have Laporta, like go ahead and take a shot on Scatterby and see if you can get like a plus on top of Scat by moving off of Sam Laporta to a contending team who maybe is streaming tight end and needs some stability there at the position for and targeting a guy like Laporta. So BTJ is another guy that I want to talk about here. We mentioned or spoke at length about Travis Hunter and kind of how you're stuck with him and his current price and how much value he's lost. BTJ has actually lost a decent bit of value as well. Whereas when he was at like the top of that tier that was below the premier assets like Jefferson, Lamb, Chase, Puka, Neighbors, he was like below that. He was kind of in the Amon-Ra tier and just ahead of Nico. Now he's behind guys like Rome, London, Nico, even Tet McMillan now. He's now fallen behind because Tet has showed some nice flashes through the first month of his career in Carolina. But with BTJ, currently value equivalent to guys like James Cook, Tyler Warren, and Garrett Wilson, he's just ahead of Lad McConkey. I don't know if he'll ever like get down to where Lad McConkey currently is because they're both disappointing right now. And I do think the upside that BTJ offers in his offense is higher than what Lad offers over the entire course of a year because we saw that again last season. But, I mean, there's no way around it. It's been an incredibly disappointing go for BTJ through the first 4 weeks, but the target volume has been there even more than a guy like Ladd. 7, 12, 6, and 7 targets, 9, 8, 7, and 10 points. He finally got into double digits, but it wasn't pretty against San Fran. Then they've got Kansas City, Seattle, and the Rams over the next 3 weeks, which I think is... I think those are all really tough matchups for him to be like highly, highly productive. I will say he's had one touchdown, I think, like the entire season. I think that salvaged week 1 against Carolina where he had that rushing touchdown, but he's gotten no touchdowns since. And when you look at last season, a big reason that he was the wide receiver 4 is because he had 10 touchdowns. If you remember, his target volume wasn't anything out of this world. 133 targets last year. Was not anything crazy. So when you look at BTJ's target volume last year, it actually didn't go up into like the tens and like low teens until the last third of the season. And that's when he started having a ton of production and all the touchdowns came in at the same time. I mean, 18, 16, 32, 28, 23, and 17 points after the bye week last year. The part of the reason this was the case and why this volume started happening for BTJ, if you remember, is that was when Lawrence went down and the Jags were looking to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And generally, the worst teams in the NFL are down by a lot of points very early in the game, which results in what? A lot of passing volume. A lot of passing volume. I mean, when Mac Jones was playing there, he was actually very productive, sneaky productive, because they were throwing the ball like 40 plus times a game. And I do think BTJ was kind of the primary recipient of that. And now that Travis Etienne has really come on, I'm not going to lie. I think aside from Shane Waldron, which we've talked about being the passing game coordinator there, I think Travis Etienne has been the biggest knock on BTJ's production this year because they're 3-1, they're winning games, and they have the lead in a lot of these games. So they're running the ball, they're establishing the run like they've never been able to for the last few seasons since Lawrence has really been there. And Etienne is having the best season of his career.
Yeah. So
I'm a little bit worried about that when you're talking about BTJ's outlook this season. As long as Etienne is producing like this year, I think BTJ is going to continue to be inconsistent. Very similar to Ladd, but a little bit more positive. I think he's going to have bigger and better days because his target volume is still consistent. Despite Etienne's production, he is getting like no less than 7 targets a game. And he just has to haul those in. And some of that is on Trevor Lawrence. But again, I would panic about Travis Hunter before I would panic about BTJ at this point in time, because even in a really disappointing stretch for BTJ, it's not like he's laying goose eggs. They're trying to get him involved in this offense. They're trying to get him implemented. And I do think it's going to come along in the near future. It's just a matter of when. And it's definitely cost you guys, I think, a lot of weeks at this point if you're a contending team owning BTJ.
Let's talk about Breece Hall. And this is an interesting dynasty evaluation because Breece in redraft, he had 16 points this last week. And so he's kind of been breaking even a little bit in terms of what we would expect from him. But the running back 25 overall in the season so far. And he's had, some bad games in there. He's only playing about 60% of snaps. I know Braylon Allen, I think he didn't come back in the game after he got hurt. So maybe that leads to an increased snap share for Breece Hall. He still possesses the receiving upside that we like to see from Breece Hall. But realistically, the problem is he's not scoring enough points for you now. He's on a bad offense, and he's valued as the 50th overall player in Dynasty right now, which puts him in the middle of the 5th round. He's right next to guys like Kyron Williams, who's on a better offense and producing just as much. Josh Jacobs, who's on a better offense, producing just as much, if not more. You can down tier to other guys and get guys that are producing just as much. So it's tough because the production's not there. Now, he's an interesting Dynasty eval because he is going to get paid. He is going to get paid somewhere. When you're looking at his contracts for this next offseason, I don't know if he stays with the New York Jets. If he did, that would kind of suck. But this is a guy that's still on his rookie deal and is in the last year of his rookie deal, and he's unrestricted free agent in 2026. And in Dynasty, if you're a rebuild or a reload, Breece Hall is actually a great player to own right now. And so he's not somebody I'm looking to probably move to a contender because I think you'd have to sell low to a contender, and you're going to get a value win in the offseason when he signs somewhere else. Again, unrestricted free agent. They have not given him he could go to a very good offense and could skyrocket up boards here because he really is that level of talent. He is playing in an abysmal situation. The Jets are like a new level of bad, which I honestly thought they would be a little bit better with Aaron Glenn. They look like a new level of bad. Getting beat by the Dolphins is a new level of bad at this point. Yep. And so from a Dynasty perspective, I'm not necessarily panicking if I have Breece Hall. If you bought into him at what he was priced in the offseason, he's going to go back up to that price when he eventually goes to a new team. I'm hoping he doesn't re-sign with the Jets, but we're going to see. He is still 24 years old. This dude is going to go to a new team, and he's going to crush it somewhere. So that's why, from a Dynasty perspective, I'm not panicked at all with Breece Hall. If you have him and you're contending, maybe you try to move him for one of those guys who's going to help you win this year. And you're not giving up, in my opinion, a significant value loss to do that because I think he's going to go up in value when he signs, but I don't think he's going to be valued in the second round. I think he's going to be valued like a really 4th at best when he does that. And so I'm fine moving off him if you're a contender and going and get somebody that's going to produce better for you. But if you're a rebuild reload, is actually a good hold. And if you're a contender and he's not even in your flex spot maybe, and you just got him on your bench, he's actually just a hold because he's going to go up in value. So this is a long-term play with Breece Hall. I think he's going to be serviceable at times this year, but he's on a terrible offense. But there's light at the end of the tunnel if you play Dynasty. We play in 3-year windows, and for the next 2 after this one, it looks like he's probably going to be in a different situation, and hopefully it ends up being a better situation. And I would say most situations in the NFL are going to be better than the one he's in right now.
Yeah, I'm with you there. T. Higgins is another guy that I think is a great target right now for rebuilds and reloads. I will say, when you're talking about the contention status of T. Higgins and what he offers for contending teams this year, it's very little. You don't feel good even flexing him at this point. And it's because that offense looks absolutely abysmal. This is now the 2nd straight week with Jake Browning where they look like a shell of what they used to look like with Jake Browning at the helm even just a couple years ago. It's going to be really, really ugly from here on out in Cincinnati, I think. And that's going to even result in Jamar Chase being very boom bust, hit or miss. And if Chase is going to be boom bust, hit or miss, again, kind of applying the same logic to the BTJ and Travis Hunter situation right now. If BTJ/Chase are not producing right now, how can we expect the number 2s in that offense to be productive? And I think you got to be looking at T. Higgins and his price. And yeah, he got that huge extension, and yes, he's insulated long term. But as a contending team, if you can pivot off of T. Higgins and go get a Zay Flowers, I would just cash out and do it now. If you can pivot off of T. Higgins and go to a more productive offense and get a guy like Xavier Worthy, yeah, I would go ahead and do that. These are all wide receiver 2s and offenses that are more productive. If I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to go ahead and just take George Pickens too in Dallas, because that passing volume is ridiculous there, and they have to score 30 points a game. They are literally this year's version of the Cincinnati Bugles from last year, where if they want to win and be competitive, they have to score a ton of points. Yep. And that benefits literally everyone in that offense. So that's something that I would recommend for those contending teams. But again, as reloads and rebuilds, be flexible here and understand that even though you're not going to get production production from T. Higgins this year, or a ton of production consistently, this is actually really ideal for you because you're getting a guy who's very insulated, who will kind of get back up to the price range that he was previously once Burrow comes back healthy next season. And as people look ahead to that, they'll be very optimistic that he's going to be solid and kind of get back to his performance levels in 2024. And that's a great thing for you when you're talking about getting insulated value and even a little bit of extra value upside on top of that when you're shopping guys. Like if you want to shop a veteran, if you want to shop like a Derrick Henry and go get T. Higgins, if it's just not working out for you as a contender and you're looking to reload, you can ship off Derrick Henry to a contending team. They give you back T. Higgins. That's an automatic value win over the course of like the next 9 months. If you want to ship off Devonta Smith or Addison, 2 wide receiver 2s and better offenses, go ahead and ship off one of those guys for T. Higgins because Higgins' value upside is objectively higher. So I do think, again, it's like, yeah, we're panicking about his production outlook this season. It's not looking good. You miss, again, when you're looking at right now today, his 3-year outlook, basically knock off this season for significant relevancy. But beyond that, I think you're looking at an outlook that's just as positive as it has been for years with him in the Bugles offense with Joe Burrow healthy.
And finally, CJ Stroud. Look, fact of the matter is, we told you about 1 billion times that CJ Stroud was going to lose value when he got into the season, like lots of value. And, you know, it's one of those things where it wasn't necessarily like, oh, we knew the future. It's more just this how quarterbacks have been valued in Dynasty Fantasy Football. The Texans offense was never going to be good enough for CJ Stroud to be rookie year CJ Stroud. But also keep in mind with CJ Stroud, and guys, I love CJ Stroud. Remember, CJ Stroud was my favorite player in that class. CJ Stroud's rookie year was the quarterback 11. Like, it's not like he was breaking fantasy football. He just looked really, really good for a rookie from a passing standpoint while offering very little rushing upside in fantasy football. So he never was like a high-end quarterback 1. Let's keep that in mind. Guys who produce at the, low-end quarterback 1 range to high-end quarterback 2 or even lower in Dynasty Fantasy Football are never really going to be valued above the 4th round. And so when CJ Stroud was valued at the end of the 3rd round this year, beginning of the 4th, it was pretty obvious that unless he was a low-end quarterback 2 at best, he was never going to actually maintain or gain value there. For him to gain value, he would have had to have been Joe Burrow. The fact of the matter is he's not Joe Burrow. And so with Stroud, I mean, again, he's the quarterback 15 in Dynasty right now. He's a fine Dynasty asset. I just don't think why do we need to roster him when we can roster somebody? We can roster Dak for way cheaper. And that was kind of our point in the offseason. And since the offseason, he's gone from the QB9, QB10 to the QB16. His overall rank has dropped quite a bit. And so with Stroud, I wouldn't say I'm panicked because, in my opinion, this was always going to happen. He's lost 25 spots in overall rankings. He's lost a good chunk of his value, like a good chunk. Can't say I'm panicked. I don't think it's necessarily too late. He's probably more of a hold than anything at this point. Jackson Dart has just passed him in Dynasty value, which I kind of get because Dart has more rushing upside there, and rushing upside quarterbacks are just at such a premium in Dynasty. But you can still down tier to Dak Prescott. You can still down tier to other guys here who are going to win you games just as much as CJ Stroud will. He's a replacement level Dynasty asset and fantasy football asset right now. He just is. Mm-hmm. And he still holds top 50, top 57 Dynasty value right now in market. Look, you can down tier still. You can still down tier. You can get somebody who's going to produce just as much as Stroud, and you can get a high upside flex option on top. I would recommend it. He's almost to the 6th round now. I think that's about where his value settles, and he's going to be a fine 6th round pick next year in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Maybe even 7th. I mean, you saw Dak Prescott and Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, those type of pocket passing quarterbacks sit in the 7th round this year in startup drafts for some time. And I think that's where Stroud should be as well. He's no different than those guys. The situation's not better than it is for most of those guys. And so, look, with Stroud, if you have him, it's unfortunate because I feel like you should have moved off of him before. He's getting closer to hold territory now, and so I don't really know that there's a ton you can do. But this is what he is. This is not something that I would be necessarily surprised about because he's going to be valued about in this range for probably a good chunk of his career. So there you go. Again, I mean, Dynasty, you have to take very slowly, digest new chunks of information. But in terms of this fantasy football season, we are a quarter of the way through it. And so it is time now to start, looking at our rankings, maybe making minor adjustments, and then evaluating for some of these guys who are off to 4 weeks of consistent slow starts. what are we doing with them in Dynasty Fantasy Football? Because it is about time where the rubber meets the road in Dynasty, and you're going to have to decide whether you're contending or whether you're rebuilding for this year. And again, we can help you decide that. You can get your team blueprint with Nathan and I doing every single one of these. You can come join the community, and Nathan and I will look at your team. We'll give you your team blueprint. Then we're going to give you infinite blueprint to build off of that every week of the season and then every month in the off season. So you can join, get everything that we offer with our Dynasty community at flockfantasy.com/domain. Use code domain when you sign up to unlock the blueprint and unlock Nathan and I, and you're going to be good to go. So we appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.